It's the Blood Red podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along. Darwin delight on debut as the Reds claim the Community Shield. We'll look back on the 3-1 win over Manchester City before putting our experts' knowledge to the test with our pre-season predictions podcast special. Our fortune tellers for this Blood Red pod are our Liverpool correspondent, Tool and always cool Paul Gorst, the Chief Ian Doyle, and the Squires. Wait, someone's called Theo as an expert there. I don't know where that's come from. Do you, Doyley?
I was actually going to suggest, have we got more people coming on? Because we're clearly not experts.
Yeah. No, to be fair, when I put into the doc experts, it did come up with a little blue grammar line saying experts. And I thought, well, if the document's telling me it must be one thing, but we'll carry on nonetheless. Gorsty, we'll throw over to the Community Shield. 3-1 win over Manchester City. And in the end for Liverpool, quite convincing.
Yeah, I thought they were very clearly the better team, to be honest, particularly in the second half for large parts of that. Liverpool really in the swing of things, weren't they? I thought Thiago was excellent, Henderson was excellent, both in very different ways. You know, they play the game very differently, don't they, as centre midfielders, but I thought they were both very good. Mohamed Salah just seemed to have João Cancelo up the wall pretty much every time he was on the ball. And to be honest, I think that, you know, when Liverpool play Manchester City further down the line, I think that's something that we can kind of revise and come back to, because that goal that he scored at Anfield in October, that was another one where Cancelo couldn't get near him. And for as good as Cancelo is, Salah just seems to have his number a bit, really. So I think that's definitely an area for Liverpool to exploit later down the line. But yeah, generally everything went well, didn't it? You know, it was billed as Haaland's debut and all that, and he barely got a kick, did he? I think he had 8 touches in the first half of the Community Shield, which is a record low. Van Dijk and Matip were excellent, you know, snuffing him out. Alexander-Arnold was back in the swing of things. So everywhere you looked, there were positives for Liverpool. And then the big one for me was Nunez getting off the mark late on. When I come to write about Darwin Nunez this season, I'm including that in his total as whole. So he's already got 1 this season for me, as Salah. So yeah, good for Liverpool to complete the set, because obviously the last 2 Community Shields they've been involved in, they've ended up on the losing side.
Yeah, no, definitely. Doyley, you were at the King Power on reporting duty with Tom Cavilla. Spoke after the game. It's on the YouTube channel about the game, and I suppose one of the key points you picked out was Gorsty said there was just how well Mohamed Salah played. A lot of the attention's obviously been taken by Darwin Nunez, and don't worry, we will get to him. But Mohamed Salah, fresh from signing that new contract, picking up kind of wherever unexpected.
Yeah, well, Virgil van Dijk spoke after the game, and he said that he thought that perhaps Salah was affected a little bit by the debate over his contract last season. And I think you look at the numbers, I think he scored 27 goals before February, and then in the last 20 games, I think it was 4. So, while, you know, he was still playing pretty well, given the fact that Liverpool did obviously win, you know, 2 trophies, got to 1 final and nearly won the league, then that would suggest that their best player, which is what he is, obviously contributed, but not in the way that he normally would do, which is scoring goals and creating assists. So from that point of view, yeah, he scored the penalty. He was involved in the build-up to winning the penalty. He was involved in the build-up to the first goal by laying off to Trent, and then he was involved in the build-up to the third goal. So he couldn't have done much more. And as Ghosty said, you know, Cancelo was had a bit of trouble with him. You know, Cancelo was first half, he was right in front of us, and he was very, very good at going forward, not so keen on getting back. And he's not the only one, though, is he? Let's face it. That's kind of, there's a lot of fullbacks like that these days whose main, you know, while they always say that, you know, we have to defend first, ideally they're in the team to create chances, because it's a lot harder to score than it is to defend, as we discovered last week, didn't we, Guy? Yeah. Did we find out what the hardest thing in football was, by the way?
Well, no, we didn't get anybody come back to us. I think
scoring
an overhead.
Quite clearly, that was not the question that anyone was interested in. Anyway, Going back to the Community Shield. I mean, I said before the game, it's a friendly. Even if Liverpool won 4-0, it's still a friendly, and it is right. It was great that they actually won a trophy at the end of it. But City, you could tell that City were a week or 2 behind. They'd only played 2 friendlies, hadn't they? And that some Liverpool fans were complaining that Liverpool hadn't played enough. Well, that's what happens when you don't. You look at City in the last 20 minutes; they got absolutely shattered. Now I think Liverpool took advantage of that. So, as Gorsty said, the bonus for Liverpool is some individual players played particularly well. Nunez obviously gets off the mark. I'll be counting that as a goal as well. Otherwise, don't count it as a trophy, but of course we will do. But it's the fact that the players are fit, and it looks as though they're a lot more ready for the season than people are actually, worried about. So there's no concerns in that. I mean, we'll come on to the Strasbourg game in a bit, but the only downside is that because it was such an intense game for a Community Shield, it meant that hardly anybody played in the game on Sunday when we saw what happened there.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, Theo, then, friendly or not, competitive game nonetheless. What did we learn from Saturday, do you feel?
All those doubts that or critics would have aimed at Darwin Nunez in the last few weeks, they were maybe a bit premature. He came on, he did exactly what Liverpool signed him for. He made himself a nuisance. He won the penalty. He scored a goal. Maybe could have had a second. He was unlucky when he was 1-on-1 against Edison. He created chances. We've seen, as Doyley's touched on there, Salah back to his seemingly best. He's got a goal already off the mark for the season, causing defenders problems. And you can tell, like, Liverpool have had those extra couple of weeks working together on the pitch. And they look good as a team. They look good as a unit. It was a very strong team that Guardiola picked for Man City. Liverpool's pretty strong as well. I suppose it's only Alisson there missing. And they've won this early mental boost against the reigning champions. Granted, glorified friendly. But still, you take it, don't you? Like in previous years when Liverpool have lost the Community Shield, we just dismiss it as a friendly. But it is still this advantage from going to the campaign. It's that first chance to get your hands on a trophy, early chance to get a goal and get a victory against your title rivals. And now they're wanting to go into the season and build on that. They've got a point to prove, having fallen short for the title in the Champions League last year. And it's interesting, the City are a couple of weeks behind on fitness. Well, the season starts in a week, and I'm not sure if they've got any friendlies coming up here, but even if another one, they're still going to have to make up ground. You want that to be Liverpool making a head start and dealing this early blow. But lots of positives there. Put Alisson back in goal. That's a team you're happy to see against Fulham, happy to see go in for the title in these early weeks and leaving that early marker.
No, I thought it was a bit harsh on Adrian. Thought he performed quite well. In terms of the Community Shield, the last two winners of it, Gorsty, have finished 8th in the Premier League. So let's hope that's not an omen for Liverpool. I'm sure it won't be. But in terms of the management of Darwin Nunez, then we spoke on Friday's podcast, our team predictions that we would have liked to have seen him start the game. In hindsight, was it ideal man management from Jurgen Klopp? Take the attention off him and let him loose for that last spell of the game that he did, because he absolutely wreaked havoc.
Yeah, well, he come off the bench, he scored, and Liverpool have won 3-1. So you'd have to say that Klopp's absolutely called it to perfection. He looked a threat, didn't he, when he came on? He's gonna pin back defenders. He's gonna play down the middle. He's gonna just be an old school traditional number 9. And I think we've spoken a few times now, haven't we, that's going to be very different from what Klopp's had previously in his Liverpool tenure. Obviously he had Christian Benteke in his early days, but he never used them week to week, did he? It was always Firmino early on who kind of established himself as the centre forward. So it's a little bit of a change in style for Liverpool, but I thought he looked sharp. To be fair, he could have had another one, didn't he? He just went for that little delicate dink over Edison and just hit him in the face, and City managed to get it cleared. And there was a header that he won the penalty for, which I don't think was going in, but he just looked a threat all game when he come on against City's defenders. And it is interesting with City because, as Doyle mentioned, they haven't had any friendlies, and they've got Laporte out now for a month or so, is he? And they traditionally start slow. You look at last season, they got beat by Tottenham in their opening game, didn't you? I remember a couple of years back, I remember them getting absolutely hammered at Leicester. And at a certain point, I think they were about 5 points or something behind Liverpool at one point last season, just like they were 6 or 7 points behind them in December the season previous. So they're not a team who absolutely come flying out of the traps. And this season's going to be a little bit different, isn't it, with the World Cup, slap bang in the middle of it in November. So how much of a long-term impact could that have on where the title's going to go? We don't know. It's obviously too soon to speculate, but it's just an element that might make this season a little bit different, a little bit, something to kind of, for the fans to kind of, clutch at, because there's not a whole lot to clutch at when you're looking at little weaknesses for Manchester City. So, we'll see how they, if they can kind of change that habits of the last few years where they start slow. But from Liverpool's perspective, a little bit of a mixed bag across pre-season, but the Community Shield was the big one, wasn't it? The players would have seen as more than just a friendly designed to build fitness, and I thought they played really well against the only team I think who were going to be rivaling them this season.
Yeah, no, definitely. On Darwin Nunez, Doyle and Gorsty mentioned that will be something new for Jurgen Klopp to kind of have a number 9. He looks a lot more, albeit for what 6'3" or whatever, to be far more mobile and capable of even getting involved in that press. And I think a lot of people from the outside are maybe making the point. But equally, Jurgen Klopp, I suppose, has proven in the past he can use a kind of out and out number 9 with Daniel Sturridge. I mean, when he first arrived, he was very injury hit, but the back end of that season, I seem to remember Sturridge going on a bit of a flurry of goal scoring, and whenever Jurgen Klopp did seem to use him, he was a valuable member of the team. Just could never quite stay fit.
There was a guy at, what was his name at Borussia Dortmund? Lewandowski. That was it. So he was quite good. So that is a bit of a sign that Jurgen Klopp. I know what you're saying, though, Guy. I don't want to be facetious about it, but that it is a completely different team, and it will take time for Liverpool to get used to him. Fabinho was speaking after the game as well. That's just gone up on the Echo website, where he's been saying that, look, it's going to take a while for us to get used to him and him to get used to us. Totally different. And interesting, he said that we've seen that he's got quite pally with a lot of the past Spanish and Portuguese speakers for obvious reasons, because his English isn't particularly great. It's almost non-existent before he arrived. But Roberto Firmino's one of the ones that's taken him under his wing, and of course, for a lot of supporters, a lot of observers, he's the player that he's going to end up replacing. So, we will interested if Firmino teaches him the ways of the press and the tracking back and the annoying defenders, then that'll be very good, because obviously he's got all these other attributes to his game, as has been mentioned. He's something I picked up on, and I may have mentioned it in the pod the other week. I can't remember, but I've certainly written about it. Is one thing I noticed during the summer is when Keita played, the amount of times he was playing Nunez through, and I think he's a different kind of player, and that might be someone. I know Keita is very divisive in terms of what he's done at Liverpool, but he's going to be here this season, so people just need to crack on with it. And if people are complaining about Liverpool not having enough midfielders, when if he's fit, then he's somebody can bring Nunez into the game, then that's good. And also, the crosses that Liverpool got in, Salah put in the cross for the for the goal and also for the penalty, and that's something that we haven't really seen a lot with, because Firmino, for all his talents, I know he has scored a few headers, and someone will just tell me about all the headers he's now scored, but he hasn't scored loads of headers. You wouldn't say that's his forte, but for Nunez it is. But he's not just a big guy who can head it, as you said. He's someone who can move around the pitch. He's fast. His positioning will improve. I do think that his touch is perhaps not quite there yet, but that might just come from being in a new league, and also the pace of the game in the Premier League is going to be a bit faster than what it's used to. But he's had the experience of playing in the Premier League, and as Liverpool discovered against Benfica in April, was it? I think it was April, yeah. In April, that he knows where the goal is, and he knows how to score, and he's got a good finish on him.
Yeah, definitely, and saw that he's not afraid to put his head in where it hurts, Theo, as well. Equally, getting that goal, glorified friendly or not, a big tick in the box of getting off the mark, opening his account, and immediately creating that connection with the supporters, so you could just see what it meant to them.
Yeah, you could. I think whenever you sign this striker, this big money striker, you need them to get off the mark quickly, just to settle nerves. Liverpool haven't had the best record, really, with traditional number 9s in the Premier League since Fernando Torres. There's one or two, but they play a little bit differently. But you want them to get that early goal and to get that relationship. And so many of these key players under Jurgen Klopp in recent years, including like Virgil van Dijk, but you're thinking Mane and Salah, they've got off the mark quickly on their debuts. Jota scored on his Premier League debut, so it's just carrying on that trend, and hopefully it's the first of many. But with Nunez, he's in this unique position where he doesn't need to come in straight away and get 30, 35 goals to be deemed a success. He can take his time like Jota did in his first year, maybe get 15 or so goals, because you've got Mohamed Salah next to you who's going to take that main responsibility. He's got time to find his feet. But it's definitely a positive sign. Like, we've seen all the compilations and the rival fans saying that you've signed this flop, big money flop. And no, it's just friendlies. It's more important for him to be in these positions, and it's encouraging for him to be in these positions, creating the chances. And we know he can finish. We saw that last season. We've seen it in pre-season. But we've seen in this game against Man City, he's put his head in where it hurts, got in that 6-yard box and connected with a couple of crosses to make things happen. It was a really good diving header. He timed his run well. And those relationships with the likes of Salah are already starting to flourish there. You can see him linking up and making those runs. You compare that to Man City when you had Kevin De Bruyne being so frustrated because Haaland wasn't running in behind. It's a positive for Liverpool, but that's why they signed him, and it's something they can work on for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think Jurgen Klopp, it was the pre-match press conference, of course. He might have been post-match. I might be getting them mixed up. But I remember him speaking in the press conference saying that Darwin Nunez, we need to not always give the ball to him every time he makes a run, because sometimes it's for the defenders to push them back. And that allows the midfield to come into the game. Taking the point that Doyle made before about Naby Keita, but extending it to the rest of the Liverpool midfield. I suppose over the last year or so, we've seen a number of more attacking-minded midfield players come into that area of the pitch, which for so long for Liverpool has been very functional. Just wonder if Darwin Nunez, in that kind of off the ball running of pushing defences back, is going to lead to maybe a more attack minded Liverpool midfield. And finally, that long standing critic of the Liverpool midfielders don't get enough goals may well be put to bed.
I'm not sure about goals. There's no one in that Liverpool midfield who jumps out at me as being able to get 10 plus. Fabinho got 7 last season, which was a bit of an anomaly. I think a few of them were penalties, weren't they? A couple of them against Shrewsbury in the Cup. But in terms of assists and creativity, then yeah, that's certainly a thing you can look at. Particularly with Thiago, I think if he gets some, good looking runs from Nunez, he's more than capable of finding them and putting the ball in the right area for him to run onto and hopefully stick away. And Keita as well, to an extent. He's more of a carrier of a ball, isn't he, than an out-and-out passer. But certainly, if he is able to kind of vote Nunez, then Keita has the ability to find them as well. So it's something I hadn't really thought too much of, but now we're talking about it, it's something to keep an eye on, actually. And of course, you've got the likes of Trent and Robertson who'll be able to find Nunez wherever he is on the pitch if he has made the right run. But it'll take time for Liverpool to get used to his movements and vice versa. I don't think you can come into a team as kind of tactically tuned in as Liverpool are and just hit the ground running straight away. I think it does take time, no matter who you are and what you've done in the game. And this is a young lad who hasn't played too much, as he's only just turned 23. Had a fantastic season last year, but I think it'll take a bit of time for him to get truly up to speed. But while he's waiting to do that, I'm sure he'll still stick the ball in the back of the net now and again. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he's all about. I agree with Doyle. His touch looks a little bit loose at times, but that'll all come in time, working with these players and these coaches, and it's an exciting time, really.
Yeah, there isn't maybe that dependency on him to hit the ground running immediately, like perhaps the number 9 for Manchester City who was playing there perhaps is. But Doyle, moving beyond Saturday, you were at both games over the course of the weekend, this friendly with Strasbourg on Sunday as well. A few of the players involved in both games. I mean, it obviously wasn't a great result for Liverpool. It was a very young team fielded as well. But pre-season as a whole, that game included, what have we learnt from Liverpool ahead of the new season, do you think?
What have we learned? Well, they're going to miss Mane, that's for sure. And it's going to take a while to adjust to that, not just in terms of what he does in terms of going forward, but tracking back as well. And his aggression as well. I do think you look at games against City last season where, the goal in the semi-final, you could argue there could some Liverpool players who could have scored that. Firmino would have tried to score it, but would he have had the legs to get up there? You know what I mean? So it's one of those. In some ways, Liverpool have been preparing for his departure because he's been playing down the middle, which meant that where he would normally play on the left, Diaz has been there. I must admit, Diaz has been one of the players in the summer who's not quite been at his best, and I do think perhaps it might be he won't quite have to possibly straight away the same impact as he made when he arrived back in January, where he was a bit of the unknown, and I think he was just getting by with the fact that they were just playing games all the time, and he was getting introduced, and then he obviously started the games. I think it's a bit different when he's been playing in training, where he's had the full hit of a pre-season. So it will be interesting to see what he can do. And of course, he's not got Mane there, which is another example of why they're going to miss it, because he was so important to the way that they played. One or two youngsters have come through. I mean, we mentioned the other day, didn't we, about 5 substitutions and how that's going to be important. So the likes of Harvey Elliott, Fabio Carvalho, that they don't necessarily have to be starting games. They just need to come on and do something in them, and there'll be a lot of players like that. It's interesting, I think, that the centre-back thing's interesting, because last season we ended with Canate being first choice alongside Van Dijk. Now it looks like it's Matip again, who was for the large part of last season. Joe Gomez started the summer quite well. He had a bit of an iffy game. Who was it against? I can't even remember. Who did he get beat by? Salzburg. He had a bit of an iffy game, didn't he, in that game, I think.
So you're going to say United?
Yeah. No, he was all right against United, wasn't he? Was he? I can't remember.
I think you all had a game.
Only I was that. That doesn't
It was
count.
a Salzburg game that Sesko sort of ran past him. Well, ran past Canate, then played that 1-2 round.
Yeah,
Gomez,
exactly. So it was the Salzburg game, but he'd done all right, I think, against Palace, and Klopp had actually talked up about how well he looked in training, and he's in the best physical shape that he's ever been in. So, he'll get more minutes than he did last season. What was interesting at Strasbourg is when he went to right back, I thought he played quite well. So, Calvin Ramsey, we haven't seen anything of him. Nico Williams obviously gone. So if Trent is going to have a replacement, not sure James Milner would be so keen. So to be fair, Milner's actually been one of the best players in the summer. He played what? He played about 20 minutes against City and got a bit of a shout out from Klopp. Then he played the full 90 against Salzburg, and he's probably running a marathon at the moment now, or just running around.
Klopp said after the game, didn't he?
Yeah.
He said, "I don't know what to expect from Milner this season," but it wasn't like a derogatory. I don't know what to expect. It was more a compliment of, I think he's going to just keep going.
Well, we've said there was a period, wasn't the last season, where he just was nowhere near the team. We thought that's it, but then towards the end, he was playing more and more. These more and more minutes, So again, I think he'll have a role to play in that sense. So. It was good for some of the squad players to get time on the pitch. In terms of the youngsters who've come through, I don't think any of them are ready for the first team. I know everyone's been speaking about Bajcetic, and I do think he's actually good. I haven't watched him quite a lot at the academy, but he's still a long way away. And he looks like Tyler Morton's going out on loan, and Maguire and Chambers, they'll have benefited from their experiences, but they're not really close. They just want to continue developing the under 21s. So in that sense, the losers are the ones who got injured. Jota, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Kelleher missed a chance to play games. Doesn't really matter so much for Alisson, and Tsimikas probably missed out on a couple of games as well. But at least Tsimikas and Alisson, they know what they can bring to the team. And Oxlade-Chamberlain might be, for him personally, it's a big loss. But for the team, I think Jota's the bigger loss, because he's somebody who scores, as Theo said, scored in his first Premier League game for Liverpool. He scored a lot of goals, and he gets important goals, as we've spoken, and he could also take the pressure off Nunez. So a little bit up and down, but overall, as we saw against City, they can't really be in much better physical shape, the ones who are actually fit.
Right, that's pre-season taken care of. Predictions time then, chaps, for the second half of the podcast to look ahead at what is to come for the season to come. Theo, I'll throw over to you first. First category we're going to get into. Easy one. Who's going to win the Premier League?
Normally when we do these, I stick by the logic of you vote for Man City because then you're not going to be disappointed when it happens. But I think I must have this wave of positivity after beating him in the Community Shield, because at the moment I am leaning towards Liverpool.
You spent too much time with Ian Doyle, I think. You've got that,
maybe.
That aura of positivity off him.
Well, we know Doyley's going to say Man City, so I suppose I should say Liverpool. But I do think they're in a stronger position long-term going forward than they were maybe 12 months ago when Canate was the only signing. Yes, we need to see it on the pitch. We need to see the new signings settle in. But the fact that they went so close to winning this quadruple last year, now we've got that positivity of Salah. Well, he signed his new contract. He's here for the next 3 years. There's no reason not to have this feel-good factor at Liverpool. So, yeah, I'd like to think they can do it. It seems that they can adapt to Nunez maybe more easily than Man City can adapt to Haaland. And as we've already said, there's not as much pressure on him as there would be at the Etihad. If Salah can do what he did in the first half of our season and stretch out for a whole campaign without the distractions, without the fatigue, he's not going to have to play in the World Cup. There's no reason why Liverpool can't go all the way, and they're probably owed to sit a title, aren't they? Like, they've fallen short by a point in a couple of seasons. It's their turn to win it again.
The O is reading a lot into a glorified friendly there, having called it that earlier on in the podcast. We'll have to wait and see if that is how things play out this season. Doyley, are you going to say Man City?
Of course I'm going to say Man City. It's like you'd probably, I'm about to say you'd have to be an idiot not to think they're going to win the league, but I've obviously got Theo behind me or underneath me here. What a lovely image that is. But yeah,
it'd be boring if we all said the same, wouldn't it?
I would like to explain my choice, if I may, Guy, before you start mouthing off as per. Klopp said this before the Champions League final last year. He said he mentioned something about there was a game where I think it was the Southampton game, wasn't it, where Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott started, and obviously Cavalier was coming in, and he said it's like a period of transition. These are going to be the future, and I do think this is going to be a season of transition because Liverpool are going to have to adapt to a new way of playing, And when I say transition, I don't mean they're going to finish 10th. I mean they're not going to be getting 90 odd points this season. They're not going to be doing all what they did last season. Forget last season; it's never going to happen anytime soon again for Liverpool. I don't think people forget just how hard it is to do all of these things. How hard it is to get to a Champions League final. I'm going to say it. When Arsenal were one of the main dominant forces in the Premier League, how many Champions League finals did they get to? Come on, Guy.
I wouldn't have said they got to one. They got to one in 2006, but I think they finished. Well, they did finish fourth that season. I don't think
but that
by
was
then
around that time they'd won the league,
Yeah.
haven't they? Yeah. Okay. So they were one of the main forces in the Premier League. Chelsea, how many times they got to the final? It's not many. City, you know what I mean? So Liverpool have got to 3 of the last 5. That's hard in itself. On top of that, they're going.
I'm going to just jump in there though. My argument would be on that. The other European contenders probably have not been weaker than what they are now in terms of Champions League progression.
Well, I suppose both Arsenal and Liverpool played Villarreal in the semi-final. Yeah. So,
yep.
Yeah. We'll go back to the Premier League. The Premier League's hard in itself. You know what I mean? So I do think that Liverpool are not going to be able to challenge on all these fronts. And I do think Man City will win the league. I think they'll win the league by a bit of not a distance, but we're talking 5-6 points, something like that, City in the end. And I think Liverpool will be challenging with Tottenham for second place. And then you're looking at probably United for... I mean, hang on, you're going to do the Champions League qualifiers as well. So you're going to do that a bit later, or do you want them now?
No, we're coming to the top 4 next. So
okay,
you reckon City are going to win the title?
No. City are going to win the title and Liverpool finish 2nd or 3rd.
Right, okay. Gorsty, who are you agreeing with? Theo or Ian Doyle? It's a difficult decision. Pick wisely.
Choose Paul, given the fact who gives you lifts a lot.
I mean, did you just say then, Doyle, you'd have to be an idiot not to pick City?
Yes.
You used that phrase. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you'd be an idiot to not pick Liverpool or City, because I think too often people just think you can bring in new players and it's like a magic wand and it immediately means you're going to challenge. Definitely don't agree with the point that Liverpool are going to be challenging with Tottenham for second. If Liverpool finish second, they're going to finish second by 8 to 10 points. City and Liverpool are just streets ahead of everyone else. They're consistently getting points tallies above 92 points, above 90 points. I think the lowest out of those, I think in 3 of the last 4 seasons, they both recorded over 90 points, and the lowest of that point tally collective was 92. The highest was obviously 100 with City, and Liverpool got 99, didn't he, in 2020. So, for all the pretenders that you've got, your Tottenhams, your Arsenals, Manchester United, Chelsea, obviously, like a bit of a bull in the china shop at the moment, aren't they? Trying to bring players in and high-profile players at that. But Liverpool and City is just far too consistent and far too good. So it's a coin toss. There was a point in it last season that could easily flip around this season. So I couldn't disagree with Theo or Doyle really picking one or the other. But just because this is a Liverpool podcast, then why not back Liverpool to win the league?
Yeah, I'd say I'm of the mindset of Liverpool as well. But
why's that, Guy? Why's that?
Maybe recency bias of the Community Shield and
the glorified friendly. Good. Yeah.
So maybe that's just playing on my mind. But to be honest, I don't know.
Apology.
No, Laporte's injured for City, isn't he? Hallmarks maybe of
City. We were City's first games. West Ham, Bournemouth. Else.
I mean, the year they didn't win the title, that Liverpool won it, they went away to Norwich early on and lost, didn't they? So I mean, I kind of say maybe that's a bit irrelevant. I just don't think their squad is as deep as what it has been in previous years, which was the same last year. And I do think Laporte's already injured, and when their squad seems to hit stress points, it does seem to fall away a bit for them. And I think there's more chance of City dropping off the pace they've been setting, as they did the year they didn't win the league, than there is Liverpool. I know Liverpool, the following season after winning it, had the injury crisis that they had and really fell away. But even by the end of the season, they won, 10 of the last 11 games? I think Liverpool, even if they're weakened at times, still have that ability to keep the grind going. I get your point of it being a transitional season, Doyley, but I do just think the squad, the muscle memory they've now collectively got, I think there's just a routine for them.
You got to bear in mind as well, as Gorst was pointing out before, it's essentially like the old, I'm not sure whether they still do it in Argentina, where they have 2 half seasons and then put them together and have them. That's
I don't know if they still do it, but
also, look at the table last year. Because during the World Cup, the teams will have, the ones who aren't playing in the World Cup will have a 3-week break, then they'll go for 3-week training. It's another pre-season.
But we made the point. We made the point on Friday's podcast, didn't we, of how few internationals actually Liverpool have. Even those who are picked for international duty are likely to be good tourists and just in the training squad.
They'll still be there though. And of course, the other thing as well is, unless you're getting to the latter stages, you still get another 2 weeks off anyway.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be a huge point, though. Because most of Liverpool's squad aren't going to be massively involved at the World Cup, are they? Even like players who do go, Henderson and Trent for England, they're not going to be starting, are they? And Salah's not there, and as we spoke to today, Fabinho doesn't play regularly for Brazil. Firmino doesn't. Robertson, Scotland aren't there. Matip doesn't play for his country. Thiago's on the fringes of the Spanish squad. So everywhere you look across Liverpool's, first team, they're not players. They're not like Salah when he went to the Africa Cup of Nations and he played every single minute for Egypt, and they played 320-minute games and then they got to the final. So I think that could be a big factor, coming into post Christmas, New Year, especially when the game starts to pick up again, thick and fast.
Essentially, what you're saying is anyone who reports on Liverpool needs to take November and December off.
Yeah, I think that's probably. Yeah, I think that's probably collectively a good idea. Yeah, no. In terms of the table, though, last year Liverpool did, in terms of your expected models and whatnot, overperform the XG. Which again, I think they're just so used to doing that. Where City did overperform, but I think by a point or two, I think they are more kind of going to perform to the mean. And I don't know what their mean will be for this year. But in terms of the rest of the top four, then we'll rattle through the other categories. We got top four. Then Gorst, I'll come back to you. Who are going to be the other teams in the top four? And you can go in what order you want if you want, or you can just tell me three clubs' names.
Yeah, well, I've said I'd back Liverpool for the title because why not? When the margins are so small, I don't think it's a ridiculous shout. City in second, and then third and fourth is between Tottenham and Chelsea. Can't really see beyond that. I see you Winston there, guy. I'm afraid.
Can't see beyond that. Wow. Doyley?
Well, I've already said Tottenham are going to finish top three. So that leaves one. Chelsea, this is the great danger is underestimating Chelsea, and I think that's what people might do this season. So I'm a bit concerned by that. So I'm going to underestimate them and say they won't finish in the top four. I think they'll finish fifth. Arsenal challenging with Newcastle for sixth, and I think it'll be United will be fourth because I think they've bought quite well. They've got a good manager, and they cannot be as bad as they were last season.
Newcastle.
Yeah, I was just doing that to wind up.
Oh, right.
They bought two.
Although I would say Newcastle will finish seventh or sixth.
They've got a few bob, but doesn't mean they're good. There's a difference, isn't there?
Yeah,
there was only City and Liverpool who got more points than them since January.
Yeah, there was about 17 teams got more points than them in the first half, though, wasn't there? I guess the recruitment's a big thing, but
yeah, Doyley. I was going to say I didn't have Doyley down as a calendar year table merchant.
Oh no!
I thought as an Arsenal fan that was probably going to be
thing,
me.
Isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, definitely. Right, Theo, you've been chuckling away in the background. What's your top four?
Agree with Gorsty. Top two is Liverpool and City, whichever order. So as I said, Liverpool go City second. Tottenham, they've had a really good transfer window. They've signed well. So making the prediction now, August the 1st, lean to them to be third. But Tottenham, always going to Tottenham. We'll see if that happens. They've got a world-class manager in Conte. I'm going to go Chelsea fourth, but with the knowledge that they've got lots of money in another month in the transfer window, their squad could be looking so different and so much stronger in 4 weeks' time. So they could go for third. Arsenal, they need another couple of players, but they've had a good pre-season. They'll be going for fifth. Not rating United. It's going to take them a while to get back to their best. And that's it, isn't it, for the big six?
Yeah, I did say four, but yeah, you said six, so that's fair. Another team who's had a very good transfer window are Arsenal. Jesus the Saviour is in.
His name's Jesus, by the way. His name's Jesus. It's not Prince Jesus. Just to let you know. Okay.
And the top four awaits. So yeah, I know I don't often get involved in these things, but I'm going Liverpool, Manchester City. I'm not going to swear on the podcast for third, and will be Arsenal. So that'd be my way. Doyley,
are you as confident about that as you were for Rafinha joining Arsenal? Because I'm pretty sure you're adamant that was happening a few weeks ago.
Don't think I was. Different person you obviously spoke to. Doyley, Golden Boot. Who's going to win that?
Haaland. There you go. Haaland.
Okay, Gorsty.
Hedging me better, but here with Mohamed Salah.
Yeah, I heard about him. He's meant to be quite good. Theo?
The Egyptian king.
Right, okay. I personally think Harry Kane might win it, but that's...
I thought you were going to say Jesus, I'll be honest.
No, Gabriel
Pre-season
Jesus...
goals count. He's about 10 goals ahead, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, 6-0 win over Sevilla, so, it's coming home. But anyway, Champions League next for Liverpool. Doyle, you can go first on this. You said how difficult it's going to be. How far do you think the Reds are going to go in Europe this year?
Well, a lot depends on the draw. They could get a really iffy group, but I'd still back them to get out of it. You'd be disappointed if they didn't get to at least the quarterfinals. They're definitely good enough to reach the semi-finals. I think the final will be beyond them this time.
Gorsty, what do you think about the Champions League? Have they? I mean, I suppose when we talk about what summer business has been done, such a crucial part of last year, the battle on all fronts was the depth they had, and I suppose the likes of Minamino and Origi come into their own in that regard. But now the squad maybe not quite as deep at the top end of the pitch as it was.
Yeah, I mean the cups look after themselves. They're the best of cups because if you're playing your Calvin Ramsey, for example, Fabio Carvalho, the fringe players, if they get through to the next round, then they go again. They carry on playing, so it doesn't. Not too much of a burden on the seniors because they only really get involved from the semi-finals onwards. So I'm not really too worried about those kind of hampering a run to the Champions League final or whatever. A lot does depend on the draw, as Doyle says, and Liverpool got away with one a little bit last season, drawing Benfica in the quarterfinals and Villarreal in the semis. But I just think now that they've got designs on winning the Champions League and or the Premier League every season. So why not? Why can't they win the Champions League?
All right. Okay. Theo, what do you reckon for the Champions League?
I'm going to go semi-finals on the Champions League. It's a difficult one this year because while I was talking about domestic cups, I think you only played one game in the League Cup before the World Cup break, whereas the Champions League games is week after week, isn't it? There's no breaks between them here. So you could get done by geography and how they fall in between the fixtures. So it's one where you can't properly assess it until we're in that second half of the season when that round of 16 draws made, when you've seen who's gone through and what the route to the final is. But it'd be a major surprise if Liverpool weren't in that round of 16 hat. And then if they've got momentum, they can go all the way. We've seen them do it before. But when you make your early August predictions, semi-final is the minimum expectation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Liverpool should be targeting the last four of the Champions League, and then whatever happens, isn't it? It could go anyway there. But so I'm not predicting they're going to do a Champions League and Premier League double guy, but I do think the semi-finals are something they should be kind of looking at as a goal.
No, I think they can win it personally. So, Doyle, what did you actually say? Because you said quarters, I think, so semis they could, final they could. Where are you saying? If we're saying minimum expectation, the other two saying minimum expectation is semi-finals, what are you saying? Is he frozen there? Or is he...
I think he's just taking umbrage with your question. He has frozen.
Yeah, he has frozen. He's not blinking, so we'll have to carry on without him. There he goes. He's dropped out now. We'll have to see if Doyle does return. Final one then.
Four like Arsenal.
Wow, right. Final one. How many trophies this season are the Reds going to win? Theo, you can go first on that.
One. I don't think they're going to be going for all four. Like I just said with the League Cup, those domestic games, it's going to be thicker and faster in that second half of the season, and that's when you need to make your priorities. So while it'll be games for the younger players, that's not the two you focus on. Liverpool almost got to them by accident last year, and they just, we're in it, we might as well win it. You take one. If they can get a Premier League and Champions League double, great, but you take one or the other.
So we're not counting the Community Shield. You reckon one more of the four that they're going to play?
Well, I spent last season mocking Man City for when they fell short of the quadruple, still having it on the side of the stadium saying they won the quadruple because they won the Community Shield. It's a nice trophy, but it's not in the big overall major honours, is it?
So applying double standards, you are counting it.
No, it's not a quintuple.
Because it's not on the Champions Wall. If they got to change the number of them on the Champions Wall,
that's the point. Let's have a look, shall we?
Yeah, well, if it does, then let's include it. Who are we to argue with the Champions Wall?
Exactly. I think it probably will be on there. But you reckon one more of the four they'll play for. Gorsty, what about yourself?
Yeah, I don't think that the rest of the cups are a priority, as Theo says. When he says they got there by accident, I do think there's an element of truth in that. I think they only started taking certainly the Carabao Cup seriously when they got to the semis against Arsenal, and the FA Cup probably similar thing, really. I think they got a little bit fortunate with some easy draws as well. So it's the big two that they're in the market for, isn't it? I think they can win the Premier League. Champions League is a little bit difficult to predict, but I think given the consistency that they've displayed in the Premier League, certainly since January, I think City have got too many kind of plates spinning and too many variables that might just count against them this year when the margins are that small. I think Liverpool will win the Premier League.
Yeah,
Community Shield is not on the Champions Wall.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I think actually Liverpool are going to put right what went wrong last season. I think they could well have a Premier League and Champions League double. And as I say that, Ian Doyle returns. Doyle, we last round of how many questions? How many trophies do you think Liverpool are going to win this season? Discounting the Community Shield that's already been the 4 there to play for, how many do you think they'll land?
None. I think I've already said they're not going to win the Premier League. Probably Bayern Munich will win the Champions League, I wouldn't be surprised. I think they proved a point in the FA Cup and League Cup last season. They're always quite, for as much people say it's not that big a deal, they're difficult to win now because the big teams just put decent teams out, so it's hard for them. I think this is a transition period for Liverpool. I think it's a transitional season. I think the fact that there's that big gap in the middle will help them actually, but I do think that. I suppose if they're going to win a cup, it might be the League Cup because, as Theo said, there's only one round played before, and if you get a good draw, they might give that a bit of a go after the World Cup. But if Liverpool are finishing in the top 2, doing well in the Champions League, and having one good cup run, I think it'll be a decent season. I just don't expect. I just don't think people understand or underestimated basically just how much of a big difference it is that they've got a striker in now instead of Mane. And I do think it'll take them a while to get used to it. And I know City have got the same thing with Haaland, but I think the way that they're set up, he can just tap stuff in and he will score loads of goals.
But they've got rid of their wide players. They've not only just brought in a centre forward, they got rid of the ammunition, the sort of supply lines.
Well, we know the damage is going to come from the fullbacks.
Okay, fair enough. Of course, you were going to jump in there. What are you going to say?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, you were saying, Dory, about if Liverpool have a good go at the Premier League, come up a little bit short, get to the semi-finals of the Champions League and have a good cup run, that is sort of considered part of the course and quite a decent season. I disagree. I think Liverpool now, the way they are, the way this team's been set up and like this kind of period and an era, if you want to call it, I think anything less than a trophy a season now has to be considered a bit of a disappointment. I think Alexander-Arnold said something similar, didn't he, in a press conference before one of the Champions League games. I just think they're so used now to just picking up little trophies here and there as they go, particularly last season, that anything less than winning something is a bit of a major disappointment.
Well, the message is get out on the streets and party. The Community Shield has been landed because that's all that's coming to Liverpool this season.
That's totally not what I'm saying. That's totally not what I'm saying. That is not what I'm saying. The one thing, let me finish. It will not be boring. It will not be boring, and it'll be good to watch. And yeah, we saw they had a parade. Okay, they won the League Cup and FA Cup, but they'd have had a parade anyway. I think after the Champions League final. So
strap yourselves in, get ready for the exciting ride of a trophyless season. It's coming to Anfield.
Well, that's just ridiculous. I mean, well, actually, to be fair, if it is, Guy, you're an Arsenal fan. Tell us what it's like.
Oh, wow. Right. That's all we have time for on this edition of the Blood Red podcast. From myself, Guy Clarke, Ian Doyle, Paul Gorst, and Theo Squires. Thanks for your time and your company. It's bye for now.